We have reached the main event of the evening.
This is Voice of the Cage Radio with the voice of the cage himself, Patrick Stanger.
We're about to tussle.
Fighters, trainers, promoters, events, rumors. If it has to do with MMA, we're talking about it. Here's your host, Patrick Stanger.
Welcome to Voice of the Cage Radio. I'm Patrick Stanger, your host. Joining me in the studio, as usual, is Paul Erickson from TXMMA.com. How you doing, Paul?
Good. How are you doing today, Patrick?
I'm great, and I'm excited. We're going to talk about UFC 129, all right? Huge fight card, GSP versus Shields. Also, we're going to talk to Raul Rangel from Undefeated Magazine. He's got some news and MMA rumors. So, anyway, what have you been doing? What's been going on?
With myself?
Yeah.
Well, you know, the same old work, and of course, keeping up with the fight scene, and of course, I've got my website, txmma.com. A few local fights here and there. Was at the, at the last Game of Combat here in Austin, which you announced, of course.
Right. Great fight card. Great fights.
And, of course, we've taken in all the great fight shows lately on TV. So between Strikeforce and the last UFC and everything that's gone on, it's been pretty busy overall.
It has been busy. I mean, this the first, 4 months of the year, we had a fight almost at least every other weekend.
Right.
And it kind of slowed down a little bit. So I've had a break. I'm like, yeah, I need to take a break.
But it's crazy. So, between fight schedules here in Texas, and, of course, now with the UFC, and they bought Strikeforce, and you have Bellator, and you have all these different things coming on TV. I mean, it's kind of hard to not get some MMA or, get a taste of MMA every couple weeks, whether it's on TV or locally or what have you.
Right. And if you want to get more of a taste of MMA, you can go to the Voice of the Cage Facebook fan page. Please do if you're listening to the show. And I know you guys are listening because I check my insight on YouTube, right? And I appreciate it. Thank you very much. People listening all over the world. Go to Facebook now. And then type in Voice of the Cage, and do me a favor, like my page, and you'll be able to get all my shows. Plus, I post a lot of extras. Sometimes I do contests on there. I'll give away autographed memorabilia from fighters and whatnot. So definitely, help support the show and help us get some more fans. Also, you have a Facebook page as well.
Right. So you can find the TXMMA Facebook page just by searching on txmma.com. There's a fan page there, and of course, it gets all the posts that go up on the website. There's discussions there and so forth. So it's a good segue to the main TXMMA site and a good way to keep up with things, from right within Facebook.
Also got to thank our new flagship station, which is Talk 1370 AM in Austin, Texas. They're airing our show. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks, Talk 1370.
On the phone right now, Raul Rangel from Undefeated Magazine, and he's got some MMA news and rumors.
Everyone's favorite subject, Kel Sonnet. Looks like his Nevada State Commission's hearing has got pushed back till May. It looked like we were going to find out this week. We're going to have our favorite fighter back in the octagon, but looks like it got pushed back just a little bit longer. Randy Couture, win, lose, or draw, is going to retire after this match, he says. This is it. He's got too much movies, too many things going on. He can't keep up with it no more. So, goodbye, Captain America. Talk a little about Nick Diaz and his dominant win over Paul Daly. Very happy with it. Cesar Gracie. They've decided to move him down to boxing. Will the UFC or Strikeforce step in and try and stop him from this? We're going to find out. As contract negotiations are probably going to start very, very soon.
I don't even know what to think. Randy Couture retiring, and why is he fighting Machida on his last fight? I mean, Machida is obviously trying to get back, in contention. And Randy Couture, what could his motivation possibly be when he knows he's retiring? I mean, what would any champion? Well, it might be Randy's got like a bunch of divorces and kids, so brand promotion. He's got a gym. He's got T-shirts.
He's got child support. Oh. I mean, he's got alimony to 3 different women. I mean, Randy. We all love Randy, but Randy's not the guy that you want marrying a relative of yours because he's a. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you've read his book, he's a serial cheater and he's got a bunch of ex-wives and children. So maybe Randy needs that money for a number of different reasons. But, getting away from bagging on Randy's extramarital exploits, I think it's like any champion, no champion wants to go out, number one, because of an injury or because of something happened to them, like they fell off the pedestal and they just stopped training, or they had a lousy fight. He wants to go out, if he does have a champion mentality, he wants to go out fighting somebody good. I mean, he wants to go out to fight somebody that's in the picture, and in the perfect world, he beats them. And then to leave the game that way. And so there's something in a tradition in wrestling that may be carrying over here, where you want to win your last match, and when you leave on a good note. You leave your shoes on the mat for your last match when you retire, or when you don't want to wrestle anymore. And so I think for Randy, that's his way of leaving the MMA game on his own note, is to try and beat somebody that's in contention and to defy the odds yet again. So
he wants to pull a John Elway, but not a Brett Favre.
Right, exactly. And so I kind of admire him for that. He's not going to go out trying to fight some loser. To ask the UFC for a gimme. But, why is he retiring? The guy's getting kind of old. So I think he's finally gotten to the point where he feels that, maybe he's reached the crest of what he can do and age is catching up to him, or maybe he's just ready to move on with his life and do other things. So we'll see. Yeah. Why do you think he's retiring? What's your opinion?
I think he's retiring because he's old. I mean, that's what I think he could definitely compete, but I mean, yeah, he's got other things going on, and he's got a full schedule, and he's at this point, I don't even know if this is the right word, but he's almost a novelty.
Right.
I mean, he is such a huge, figure in MMA that it's like, I almost don't want to see him fight. I want to see him make appearances. I want to see interviews on him. I want to see him take the next level, be a commentator. Right. Something like that.
I think he'll still be around the sport, but in maybe, an executive capacity, or a novelty appearance capacity, but he's going to be around, just not as a fighter.
UFC 129. This is going to be
great fight.
Mammoth fight card. You have two champions going head to head, both of which are undefeated in the last, Shields 6 years, GSP 4 years. But let's look at this. I pulled up the stats here. Let's look. In the last 4 years, GSP obviously lost to Matt Serra on April 7th of 2007. After that, he beat Koscheck, Hughes, Matt Serra again, John Fitch, BJ Penn, Thiago Alves, Dan Hardy, Josh Koscheck. Look at those names. Now let's see who Shields has defeated.
Well, he's beaten Mike Pyle, Nick Thompson, Paul Daly, Robbie Lawler, Mayhem Miller, Dan Henderson, Martin Kampman. So he's got a pretty good list of guys he's beaten too.
He barely beat Mark Kampman though.
He did.
I don't know if he beat him.
He didn't look that awesome in that fight. So that's there's a few things here and there where people question Shields as a finisher, or whether he can hang with George St. Pierre. And I gotta say, I subscribe to that too. Like, I'm not really sure. There's a few performances there, like against Kampman, and some people say it was because he's not used to the weight that he was at that fight, where I wonder about Jake Shields. But you can't argue with the fact that the guy's a competitor. The guy goes out there and he wins, and the guy is not he's not a joke. So everybody, obviously George St. Pierre's camp is taking him very seriously as a threat on the ground. That they even openly acknowledge that he's potentially a lot better than George is on the ground. So they're worried about that. So I think it'll be a good fight. I'm not going to make a prediction yet. I want to hear your opinion on these two guys first.
Obviously any given Sunday, any given Sunday, I think GSP is obviously, he has a lot of experience, and he continues to take things to the next level, his training, and he'll bring in, anybody that he can. He's getting bigger paydays. He can afford, trainers and training facilities and whatnot. And you see it on the UFC Primetime, which, by the way, I love that show. I wish they would show that more often. Man, that's great stuff. The way the editing and the storyline. And, oh, man, I love seeing that. I mean, and they run it at 11 o'clock at night. I think they could run the show probably at 9 o'clock, at least on Spike, 9 or 10 o'clock. But I'm leaning towards GSP. I mean, how can you not go with GSP? Obviously, I take Shields very seriously. A lot of people don't, but I do. I think that he's I didn't predict him to beat Dan Henderson, right? And a lot of people thought Dan Henderson was going to take that fight.
I always sort of like George St. Pierre in most of his fights. Partially because some of the guys that he's fought, I don't particularly care for sometimes. So like BJ Penn's a great fighter, but I will sort of root against him because I don't like BJ's work ethic. And Dan Hardy, I never liked that much. Josh Koscheck.
Really?
Josh Koscheck has made a career of being the heel, and he suckered me in. You got me, Josh. I don't like you. So and some of these guys like Thiago Alves is a perennial, weight misser. So that's getting on a tangent. I think I generally like George because he's good for the sport, and that's kind of a selfish thing because I like to be involved with the sport at a higher level. But you can't argue against a guy that tries to do everything right. He always tries to put on a good public face. He's a good representative for the sport, but more importantly, when it gets down to the nuts and bolts, he makes the sacrifices to try and complete himself as a fighter. Every single fight, he's trying to do something new. He doesn't really try to sit and rest on his laurels, or he hasn't tried to do that since the last time he lost. And so since then, he's obviously gone through everybody he's fought, and arguably, nobody's really put him in trouble. I mean, since he lost to Matt Serra, he's made every one of these fighters that he's fought since then, who were all, great fighters, he's made them look pretty ordinary. Taking them out of their game or beating them at their game. Made Josh Koscheck look like, he's his wrestling instructor. So it's crazy, like you can't, it's just hard to deal with Georges St-Pierre as an opponent. Now, all admiration for Georges St-Pierre aside, I've never been a big fan of Jake Shields. Like for whatever reason, I never looked forward to a Jake Shields fight. And I always bet against Jake Shields, and I always lose. So, that's the thing. He's a guy that manages to find a way to win. His win against Martin Kampmann wasn't that pretty. But this guy's beaten Dan Henderson, maybe not in an exciting fashion, but Mayhem Miller, Robbie Lawler, Paul Daly.
Carlos
Condit. So Jake Shields has taken on a variety of different styles in competition, and he's beaten them all. Maybe some of the guys you can argue are not at the level of some of the guys that GSP's fought, but he's fought a lot of really good guys. So I am going to... can we get to predictions yet?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm actually going to go GSP, but by decision. I don't think he's going to be able to put away Jake Shields. I think Jake is going to bring a lot to the table. I don't think he's going to outstrike GSP, but I think he's going to put GSP in trouble a few times on the ground, and GSP via his athleticism is going to be able to tough it out or get himself out of some of those near submissions. I just see him winning a decision. I don't see him being able to put away Jake Shields. And you know what? Who knows? It's Jake Shields, so there's a chance that the fifth round he can catch GSP in something.
Right, and GSP is going to be ready for that. And I couldn't agree more. GSP is a phenomenal athlete. He's very gifted genetically. Right. Let's not mention, and he works hard to make sure that he capitalizes on that as well.
Right.
But I'm going to have to go with GSP in 5 rounds. I mean, GSP's no closer himself. I mean, he's not knocking people out. And he plays a good game. And he's still an exciting fighter. I mean, he's fun to watch. I think some people don't think so, but both of these guys matched up together. 5-round decision for GSP. I see it going that way. What I see is a bunch of ground and pound. I see GSP using that jab again to set up the takedown. Maybe he takes him down. He gets in Shields' guard, and it's just ground and pound from there. Some elbows. Shields is going to try and triangle him, and it's not going to work. And maybe he gets up, he gets him against the cage. I mean, and you're going to see that for 5 rounds. That's what I think.
I actually think that. I'm not Greg Jackson or anything, right? But if I were planning out a strategy here, knowing how good Jake Shields is on the ground, I would probably do my best to avoid any kind of possibility of going to the ground with Jake Shields, because you can be relatively sure that St. Pierre's striking skills are better than Jake Shields. So I would actually see this as a battle where he is going to use that jab to keep distance. And maybe not overcommit himself to trying to put Jake Shields away in the feet, because he's going to expect that Jake Shields wants to close the distance, clinch, take him down, etc., work his ground. So I would say you might see St. Pierre play an outside striking game as long as he can. And if it goes to the ground, he's probably not going to fool around with Jake. As soon as he can split that guard, he's probably going to stand up and back right out and try to bring the fight to standing.
Yeah, well, GSP is known for wanting to...
Well, that's true. His ego, he may want to get there and dice it out with him on the ground, and I think that if anything undoes him, that might be the thing that does it.
And I guess he'll have to play it out and see how he feels on the ground if he gets in, some positions where, I'm sure there's a strategy. I don't think he's going to change midway in the fight.
Yeah, so let's bring up something else. So let's say he does actually succeed again in taking it to an opponent and beating him at his own game. Let's say something crazy happens. He taps out Jake Shields. right?
Right.
Or he mounts Jake Shields and he controls him so well that he ends up pounding out Jake Shields because Jake can't actually get him off of him, which nobody envisions happening because Jake is so good on his back. But let's say he does that. He beats Jake Shields. Now, this brings up the prospect of the other fight, which you and I have discussed before, which is what happens if we now get to St. Pierre versus Silva. Right? And then supposedly that's going to happen. If St. Pierre beats Shields, then it clears one of the roadblocks to that fight happening. And it sounds like GSP is open to that possibility.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to see that anymore.
I'd rather see John Jones versus Silva, actually.
Absolutely. That's where I've moved on to. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I want to see GSP fight other people. I think GSP will lose that fight, and I think most people will agree that Silva is just, he's just that good. He's just on a whole nother level of athleticism.
Silva's like getting up to our age. I think, Silva's in his late 30s now.
True. Well, he's been proven that, we've seen Chael Sonnen, beat him for practically 5 rounds.
Right.
So we know that it can be done.
Especially by, somebody that's a good wrestler, that has a good top game, which, and John Jones is a nightmare on top. So I would love to see that fight. I think, obviously, Anderson and his manager, Ed Suarez, they would not love to see that fight. Actually, they're trying to say that Silva and, he likes John Jones and they're friends and stuff like that. And John Jones, of course, like he's publicly said, like he doesn't care about friends, anything like that. Like the type of I won't fight my friends in a fight game thing, because he has a clear objective where he wants to be the best light heavy ever, right? And if that means he has to fight his friends or acquaintances, then that's part of the game. So we see some sandbagging here from Silva and Ed Suarez about actually trying to get together and fight John Jones, which is understandable because nobody has quite got an angle on John Jones yet, and so I don't think anybody wants to tangle him and risk their legacy or their championship, whatever.
Well, I tell you, it's going to have to happen in the next couple of years.
Of
definitely.
Course.
Yeah, we want to see that fight, and I think it will happen, and everybody wants to see it. It's just a matter of how do we get there? Everything's going to have to come into play for that to happen. But ultimately, fans, what it comes down to, if you want to see this fight, you need to let Dana White know.
Yeah, and it's a business. If they hear some fans really, really clamoring for a fight and it's potentially a big draw, then they'll probably make it happen. So I can't wait for that to happen. The whole GSP versus Silva, I always like GSP in fights, but maybe not that one. I think he might lose that one. Anyway, sorry. So enough on that.
I agree. Okay, well, so we're both going GSP.
We're both going GSP. So how about this next match with Couture versus Machida? How do you see that fight?
Man, I'm going to have to give it to Machida. I'm worried about him his past couple of fights. He's been timid because he got knocked out, by Shogun, and I think he's had a little bit of cage fright. I don't know what else to call it, but that's the impression I get from him. He knows that he can be beat now, and I think it's affected him psychologically. This is the thing. I don't want to see Randy Couture fight. I don't want to see him lose.
Right. Well, I don't want to see him lose either, but I saw him fight. What's his face? The tall guy that nobody liked from Miletich team.
Silva.
No,
Silva guy.
Tim Sylvia. That's right.
Tim Sylvia.
I thought he was going to lose that fight. I didn't want to see him fight because I thought Tim Sylvia was going to win in ugly fashion. And not ugly like he was going to knock him out, but it was going to be on top of him, dominate him because of size. And Randy ended up winning that fight. And so
that was like 6 years ago.
Well, yeah, true. I mean, he's much older now, but I don't like betting against Randy in general just because, one, he finds a way to win, and two, some of these fights he's going to lose, clearly. I mean, losing to Nogueira, Brock Lesnar. There are fights that he's just not going to win, but I don't like betting against him anyway because I like Randy. So I'm gonna pick Randy regardless in this fight. I want to see him win. Yeah, I don't know how Machida's style has changed because obviously, as you know, like that was one of the mysteries was how to deal with his kind of weird style that he brings to he's like countering while he's moving backwards and doing all these different things that the guys weren't used to because he was bringing some elements from traditional martial arts that people were just not used to seeing in the MMA game. And you look on the other side of the ring, and Randy Couture has always been sort of the master of figuring out people's games or how to negate their games. And now that we've seen a few people, put some licks on Machida, most notably Shogun, I think Randy might learn from that. I see this fight as being closer than you think it's gonna be. Of course,
yeah, well, definitely. I mean, I know you can't count out Captain America. Listen, I get it.
We'll see. Obviously, I'm making a more emotional pick. I mean, if I were looking at it clinically, I would look at the younger, more relevant fighter. I might probably go with Machida, since you look at the last guy, the Randy B. He choked out Big fat James Toney.
What's Randy Couture's motivation? What could it possibly be?
To go out on a win.
And what does that mean? Lyoto Machida is trying to get back into contention for a title.
Okay, so
that's some serious motivation.
So to go out with a win and also screw up Lyoto Machida's title run. I don't know. You don't know. I mean, but that's the thing. You know, Randy's very... he's very into the fact that, you know, he does have a legacy, so to speak. I mean, he wants to go out on a winning streak. Well, maybe not a streak. He wants to go out on a win, period.
I get it, but it's still a lame duck fight for me. It's a half of a lame duck fight. I mean, what is Randy Couture fighting for? Like, he's fighting for the fans. We get that.
Well, yeah, it's
but
a fan fight.
I want to see two guys fight. They're obviously motivated to win, you know, the fight of the night bonus, but they're also trying to get to a title fight. I mean, they're trying to get through somebody. You know, they're motivated. That's what I want to see.
Well,
but that's fine. I mean, listen, I'm excited about seeing it, but
it'll be an interesting fight. So we'll see whether it ends up somebody goes to title contention or not. You know, I don't know. I think that's after the fact. We want to, of course, see if the question marks around a Randy Couture match, you know, how they play out. Is the old guy going to win again? It's a good storyline. The older guy, whatever. See how it plays out.
How about Jose Aldo and Mark Hominick?
I'm going to pick Aldo.
Yeah.
You know, I think Hominick is a very solid, very serviceable guy. I mean, you've seen him win against a number of, you know, pretty decent guys. You know, obviously he's probably most well known in, you know, the last few years for triangling Yves Edwards. And he beat Leonard Garcia recently on a decision. He TKO'd George Roop, who's a pretty decent guy. But, you know, I think that Aldo's faced a higher caliber of competition. You know, he's put some hurt on a number of really good guys. So I'm going to pick Aldo. I think, you know, when it comes to the actual striking game between these two guys, Hominick is decent, but I think Aldo's going to hurt him on the feet. Aldo's
a sick fighter. I mean, obviously I followed him in the WEC, and he's got some serious punching power for a guy his size. I mean, to be fighting at 145.
Yeah, he's vicious too. So I like that.
Man, he's a ground fighter. I mean, he's a jiu-jitsu guy, but he can
pound
some people out. You know,
he's got a good mix of skills. He's got it all. So and he's mean with his striking too. So sometimes the aggression is a good X factor, and he's got it. So I think he's going to put a hurt on Mark Hominick. I think he'll probably TKO him inside of 2 rounds.
He's like a wild monkey. You just see him go in there.
Wild monkey.
Yeah,
all right.
It's like a scary monkey or something. That's what he reminds me of, because he does his thing after he wins, you know.
Right.
All right.
So we're both picking Aldo.
What about this guy, Vladimir? How do you say his last name?
Vladimir Matyashenko, the janitor, versus Jason Brills. Well, these are two big, I don't know, pretty tough, serviceable guys, you know, that have got a fair amount of experience. Obviously, Vladimir's got a lot of experience. He goes back to the old Raw team days with Randy Couture and Deanne Henderson and Matt Lindland when they're all part of the original Raw team. And you know, I'm not super excited by this match. I think it's going to be a grinder of a match between two, you know, primarily like grappling related guys. And Jason, you know, is younger. I'll probably pick Vladimir by decision in this one.
Yeah, I don't have a prediction. I don't.
What's a fight you're interested in? Well, you know what?
I don't want
Nate Diaz. I'm gonna pick Nate Diaz over Rory McDonald just because I like seeing the Diaz brothers fight.
Yeah, definitely the Diaz. I mean, you got to go with Nate. I mean, he's got that huge reach. You know, he'll
be talking crap during the fight to his opponent, so it's always entertaining.
What about Ben Henderson and Mark
Bocek? I'm gonna pick Ben. I think, you know, Ben is trying real hard to get back to a title fight since he lost the title, and I think he's gonna have more motivation for this fight. The guy's very talented, so I'm gonna pick him over Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like he got his ass kicked in the title fight either, because he didn't.
No, I mean he sort of lost that last round, basically.
Yeah.
Well, am I right? Am I remembering the right fight? That was
where he jumped off the fence. The other
Pettis.
Guy, yeah. Jumped off the fence and kicked him in the face.
Yeah. So he got that last round like jerked away from him by Pettis, and in, you know, spectacular fashion. So I think that kind of, he seems to be in a real tear to get back to a title fight and get his title back. So I think he's going to have the extra motivation to beat Mark Bocek.
It should be a great card. UFC 129. Again, guys, go to Facebook, type in Voice of the Cage, and click like. Help support the show. Also, too, you can go to Facebook and type in TX MMA and support TXMMA.com. Well, thanks again for joining me today.
Thanks again for having me.
Fight fans, thank you for joining me. We'll do it again next time.
Till next time, take care.
Thanks for listening to Voice of the Cage Radio with the voice of the cage, Patrick Stanger. Please email questions. Do you want me to say please or just email? Please seems so out of place.
Did I say please? Okay, sorry. No, don't. Thanks
Let
for
me
pointing that out.
let me elbow you in the face and please email your inquiries. Okay. Email questions, inquiries, and other business to info@voiceofthecage.com. Facebook search Voice of the Cage and like to get the latest Voice of the Cage radio show. To book Patrick Stanger at your next fight promotion, visit voiceofthecage.com.